Hey guys, Typo Skyper here, and let's go into the talking about my personal movie reviews. And so let's start it whizzing about the Back to the Future movies. Well, you can say it's Back to the Future movies, guys. And so it was directed by Robert Zemeckis. And let's not forget that he brought the other movies like when he done the Forrest Gump, Contact, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Castaway. And as someone understood, he did the directing as well. But the Back to the Future is way more. But not just one, but there's 3 movies that is possible. But I'm trying to figure it out as close as possible and I can. And let's see about this in Back to the Future, about this in this Back to the Future trilogy. So let's find out and tell them my own personal opinions. And I try to figure it out as close as possible. So let's see what happens until that. The Back to the Future trilogy. So there's going to be the talking about all these 3 films as closely as possible because they are my favorite films on the whole time. Before it was what happened, I knew this is what happened. But I tried to figure it out, but it was very interesting, the movie. But not just one, there are entirely 3 movies as possible. The ones that are my favorite, a lot of it, it's a great story and a great characters, and there's a lot of it. It was released by the Universal Pictures, and of course it was directed by Robert Zemeckis. And yeah, you can say they were my favorite films in the Back to the Future trilogy. So now let's start with all these movies and it's closely. It's a comedy, a science fiction, action, and in the high school movie. Well, you can say it's fantasy, but it's also this plot in this film is very close as possible because it's Back to the Future. It's a time travel movie as possible. So now let's start it with one by one first. Before I'm not getting taught too much about this because I just want to get it close as possible because I want to try to make it. I saw this movies as trying to make it as possible. Alright guys, so here's in the Back to the Future Notice Pop 1. So let's get plotted into the film. It was a year in 1985, Hill Valley. There was a young kid named Marty McFly. He's a cool kid. He plays some kind of famous rock star or something like that. He plays a guitar. And it's also that he plays on a roller skating, but his parents are some kind of unperfect or something. His uncle was released to prison. His mother, she's drinking too much. She's like an alcoholic, and his father is some kind of dweeb. I know, it's like a nerd of it like that. But it's not the only that. He's the only one that trusts in his friend, Doc Emmett Brown, a crazy man and scientist. But instead, he's trying to use and trying to inventions like a science or whatever. But instead to help him out like a time traveling machine, known as the DeLorean, like a time machine. But now is what happened, and then the scene, it goes to the tested scene in the DeLorean. And now I think is what happened is this. So now, I think what happened. So now, Marty decided this goes back in November 1955. So Marty's trying to rescue his parents. How is he getting to succeed from his bully, Bill Tannen? And that was what happened and didn't succeed until in a week. So now he's trying to use them to help him out. George McFly and then with his girlfriend until he's got his wife. Years later, what was that? Lorraine, if I recall. So they're trying to use it to help him out his parents from the high school in the 1950s. Or whatever you can call it in 1955. So that was trying to get it succeed to try to help. George McFly is trying to help him further than his girl, Lorraine, and then was trying to use to help him out. But it's also, he trying to use to find a Doc Emmett Brown to get in it before it's making it a time machine. He's trying to use it to help him out. He's trying to think in his mind, called it known as maximum capacitor. But what happens, he has it in it accidentally, whatever they call it. And now I think he's trying to use it to help him out. So let's try to, there's the third rule of this. The 3 rules on is there. The first one is trying to help him out. And Marty is trying to use helping his parents from the Bill Tannen. It gets succeed, it won't get it succeed, it has the problem. So that there's an has related the family about the McFly family as well. So they get it succeed until his time is right. The second one, he goes back to the 1985. So that's what happens further in the beginning of the film. Now, the third one, Dr. Brown shot it from the terrorist. And there's not much else has to say, because there's a one thing that I noticed, but I know of, he still survived from the bullet. But Monty McFly doesn't realize that until later, further after that this part of what happened. And then what happened the next day, well, time has changed his history, because it's way further down than what happens. Let's not forget it, Monty McFly, his girl love interest, Jennifer. Well, you could say it's the same way, but it's kind of different. It's in change plot in the story. So that it's one thing I know of in this part. But, well, there's not much that has to say from the first film. And now need to get a 16 of what happens in the Back to the Future in the first movie. So the first movie, it's kind of like a little lacking, but it's not quite exactly in my mind what's going on. But bottom line, it's very good, the first movie, but I know of it's something about this. Why can I say that about this first movie? Now that there's an ending in the movie, there's one thing I know of, other than this plot. I think the first film is very good. This was after Succeed from the Back to the Future, not the first movie. There's a sequel that's on it, and now it's working. Was after the first one, it is not much in exactly what's the first one, and now that there's a sequel, it's further on and on. Now, there's a part 2 on the other hand, so you can tell to say this that there's a one thing. So, let's get started in the sequel from the plot. It was in the year 2015. It starts when what happens and that there's a flight around at a Bill Haley, and it goes to the future. There's a DeLorean, there's a flight around, it's like in the street. Bill Haley has changed and is using some kind of gadgets from the future, and there's sort of culture, seen like what's going on from the museum and all that. And there's what happens that there's Bill Tannen, the old one, and now there's his grandson, Griff. And now he's trying to use it, and that's what will happen. What Doc Emmett Brown's concern about Monty McFly has the children, about his son, Junior, but he goes in the jail. That's what happens. So when they get it succeed, they will get it succeed about the Griffiths going to jail. But there's one thing what happens after that they did it succeed, but Monty McFly is screwing up the future. Let's call it the book, call it the Almanac, and that was what happens, and it's drawing the Doc Brown's concern about this, everything about this. So now the old Biff found the Almanac, and now it's going to go back in the time and figure, and is trying to find a younger himself from the 1955. So now is what happens, but they didn't know that what's going on here. And then now it goes back into 1985, didn't notice what's going on, then the alternate version, and then it goes to like hell. So it's basically what happens, and at that part of what happens. Now, Biff Tannen has become what happens, and it's become as famous, like a Millie there. It's because what was after they got the book, the Almanac, or Almanac, or whatever his name was that book. Because Monty McFly is screwing up in the future because it's trying to use the ruining the history once again. And then what happens, and then his father, George McFly, and it's in the cemetery, like Lorian said, and that was what happened. Doc McBrownson is trying to figure it out during the alternate in 1985. And what happens that Doc McBrown found in the stick, and like in the old past and in the future. And that was what happened is this. So then they found out what date is that, and then trying to they know what's going on here. And it's way further than that. After what happens, then going back into November 1955. So it's basically what happened is this. So Monty McFly is trying to dressed up in the disguise, and that was part of this what happens. And this is why what happens, and there's a scene that was after the first movie. It's made coincidentally, right? So that there's one further in that scene I liked in the first film, but now that there's a sequel, it's the same, but at the same time, it's trying to use a way further that part I like the scene and way further. So Monty McFly is trying to reach the Almanac, and was trying to use it to get rid of it and burns. don't let it in Biff Tannen succeed, because this one thing was only even trying to ruin it back on the way it was before. So now was what happened is this. Marty McFly was trying to get rid of the almanac and trying to time has changed it further. So now that his parents and didn't much to succeed. So now was what happened. I think that the sequel was a, but I think it's very good sequel. I like the one scene that's better than the first one, but don't get me wrong about this. But the sequel in Back to the Future 2, I like this way better as much. It's a further story, further than back on the first one in the scene, and now it makes it adapt further. So I think its bottom line is very good sequel. It's a different part of story. It goes back to the future in 2015. So now it's a way further, and now this goes this one. So that what happens, that the time has changed. Was after the Back to the Future Part 2. And the end of it was some kind of a destructive lightning. The Londonian was disappeared. So now was what happened. Doc Emmett Brown is stuck in the Western. So now he decided he likes it. And now Marty McFly is stuck in 1955. So now with this, what happens? He goes to the other him 1955s. So it's trying to save the other Doc Brown for 1955. He's trying to figure out where is the Londonian. He's hiding and hide out. So he decided to send it back in 1985 to Marty McFly. But he finds out what happens in the real Doc Emmett Brown. It's been in gunshot by the board for the Mad Dog Tannen. It's like the old Western. It's like a Tannen. It's a legendary before it was that as this one. But now I think it's time that they're trying to be found. So it goes in a little change plans. Marty's trying to save Doc Emmett Brown once again in 1885. Just like the first one was after by the terrorists had been shot, and that was a bulletproof. This time, Marty's trying to rescue a Doc once again from this and the Mad Dog, and now that this is what happens, and basically, but it's a kind of the Western movie. But was after the end of it of the part 2, it begins in the trailer that goes in the short trailer. And now there's a third movie, what happens. I didn't know that, I realized it. But now it's actually the third one was the final trilogy. So now it's in the end and the sequel, and now there's a third movie. But now I saw that all these were the 3 films as possible. It was after the third one. Maybe it's in the Western movie. I didn't try to get a chance on it to see it, but I did see it. It looks pretty good. It was actually the Western movie. But this time it's trying to use it to help him out. Then it goes back of timing. But what happens that Marty McFly is trying to rescue a Doc. Basically, it's looking at the Lincoln gas and was after the Lincoln the gunshot on it. There's no way impossible. And now Marty McFly is trying to find Doc and Bill Hadley in the same year in 1885. It's like a Western movie. But now I see it's trying to use it to find out how they get to succeed with Doc Emmett Brown. Not only that, Doc Emmett Brown has love interest, Clara Clayton, and now that they have a huge problem with this, about this in the Tannen. Barefoot Mad Dog Tannen. There's once what happened, it's the same thing in like Bill Tannen. And now this whole thing was kind of using the same plot. There's different types on the characters on it. This is one thing I know of. There's one thing I noticed about this in the third movie. It's trying to use it way further after the first 2 films, and now this and you have the Western movie. I think it's one way further or not. Maybe it's just the final trilogy I know of as seeing what's going on here. And now this is a whole thing of what's going on here. And so, yeah, that's what happens in the film. Now, Marty and Doc Brown, how to use it and to go back in the time recently. Marty's trying to get Doc Emmett Brown back in 1985, but Doc Brown, he refuses, he likes more here. But Doc has a love interest, Clara, and now this is one thing what happens. But he wants her to get back with him or not. But it's this whole thing what happens, and it goes way further, they get it succeed. So bottom line, it's a whole thing was when this very good movies, all these sequels are further and on until the whole thing, 3 films, a trilogy, and then the 3rd movie. So now that there's this whole thing of Back to the Future trilogy, so then this way further. After the end of the first one, and then what happens and at the end of the 3rd movie was after Marty McFly goes back in October 1985, and now what happens and the train is on its way to Lodorian asteroids. Marty goes back in and the Jennifer was after the sequel of Lifting in the House. So now this what happens that Marty and Jennifer walked around trying to figure out where's Doc Emmett Brown. And now all of a sudden, there's a train coming out. It's like a new time machine further. So now Doc has a new family, including Clara, has a married and has 2 children, of course. So now this was what happened. Happy ending, the 3rd movie, and that was what happens. That is the end of it, a trilogy in a Back to the Future, and now this just goes way further than what happens. Happy ending for the final trilogy in the Back to the Future Part 3, and now this. That was it's a great 3rd movie. Now, before let's go to my final thoughts about the ratings. Let's go to my final thoughts on the conclusion about these 3 films trilogy here. The first one was Marty McFly. It was in the 1985 style, okay? So that this is a part of it thanks to the Marty McFly and of course Doc Brown. They're trying to help him out. They use Marty's parents and his family is trying to fix him up in the way it was before. It was by bowling was Bill Tennant. In 1955 until 1985 was it was Time Has Changed His History at any conclusion about this first film, and now it's the best one that I ever seen. Now, in the sequel, on the other hand, was after the first film in part 2. It was Time Has Changed, but now in 2015, it's kind of the future. Way back, and it kind of reminds me of the Jetsons. Before it was this one in the movie. And now I think it's like a future buildings of flying cars around and all the things of culture. But now that was what happened. That's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the Almanac book or something like that. It was Marty's idea of ruining it, and he did it once. So now I think Doc Brown was concerned about this and then don't use it. But the old Biz is trying to find it, and now it's trying to ruin the history to trying the younger himself. So now I think it's trying to use it. But the only one way is to say how, where, and when. It's just when the change course of history. It's trying to save their family. This time it's trying to stop the younger from way back in just like the previously at the first film. But Marty McFly and Doc Brown is trying to stop at Biff Tannen before it was since too late. So that's the main thing, and I think it was the best sequels in the whole time. Now the final and the 3rd movie, it's a Western movie, was after previously part 2. Marty decides and it goes back in the 1885. It's like a Western movie, and now Doc Brown he likes to stay the Western, something like that, in Ville Valley in 1885. But Marty saw it in that scene in the cemetery. It says Doc Emmett Brown has been gunshot, but the mad dog was the mad dog Tanner or whatever his name was. I think it's believed is trying to use a gunshot until the 7 days. But Marty's decided to try to rescue a dog once again. It's just like the first movie, and now it's this one. It's a jump at another conclusion. So it does change course a little bit. Marty's decided it's a shot because it's trying to save a dog. Was after, and now Marty's has in this decided it's gunshot. And now this man dog scene, it's just like in the Western movie. Now Marty's saving the legacy of the McFly family, and now this is the main course and further happened. So then my conclusion, this film is and at the end of the film, I won't spoilers and if you saw this movie or not, but believe it in yourself. And what happened is this, my conclusion, It was the best film I ever seen. Is as that was the best. There's no the Back to the Future 4, but it does have the video game in the PS3, PC games and all that. But there's no Back to the Future 4. But it does. The video game version has got these already. It's just gonna have these continuously in 1986. So that's what happens until this still the Legacy 10 is, and in the Legacy McFly, it's another thing in story. I won't spoil it about this video game, but it does happen until just find out yourselves. So now I think it's until the very end, and there's a moment that's the greatest of Back to the Future history, and of course the cinematic movie. It was. The only the redeem factor is that extremely actors. I really like these actors that did a brilliant job, and all these casts were from the Back to the Future trilogy. Let's not forget that these two people actors that I know of, Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, and of course that the ones in the dark, Emmett Brown is Christopher Lloyd. He did an amazing job what he done and has in making of this character. And now these guys here, they're both of my favorite lines and of this part of the entire trilogy. But the rest of the cast is very excellent, and the rest of them, especially what was Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. And now this is the moment that I'd like to see. And now, what can I say about Back to the Future trilogy? I like those movies, and they're my favorite actors in the whole time. And now this is a part of it. You have it here right now. Now, here's my final rating of the Back to the Future trilogy. Now, let's go in on the first one. The first one was I give it a 10 out of 9. And in the sequel, Back to the Future Part 2, I'm going to give it 10 out of 9.5. And of course, Back to the Future Part 3, I'm going to give like 10 out of 8.5. So that's that. That's from the Back to the Future trilogy, guys. And so there's one more coming up, and there's the video game of the Back to the Future trilogy. I have the PS3 version. And so, and also there's an available is on its way. There's the same time of those movies was after the 25th anniversary, and now you have this 30th anniversary is coming soon. On the Blu-ray collection includes there's the cartoon show in the 90s, I believe it was. And so when I got time and I got when I got these 3 films as possible I can, and let's see what happens until not. So alright then, so this is a Typhon Skyberg, and don't forget click like and comments below, but don't forget to subscribe here. And this is Typhon Skyberg, so I'll see you around, guys.